It is 1 a.m. The house is completely quiet.
Right. The exact time you should definitely be asleep.
Exactly. But you are lying in bed, the glow of your phone illuminating your face, and you have fallen down the absolute most familiar, mesmerizing social media rabbit hole on the internet.
Oh, we all know the one.
You are watching a video of someone pouring these glossy, hyper-pigmented, swirling liquids into a silicone mold. It honestly looks like liquid candy. Or maybe a galaxy caught in a cup.
Yeah, the visual is just incredible.
Right. You watch the colors bleed together, you watch the tiny, stubborn bubbles get popped with a miniature blowtorch, and suddenly you are completely hooked. 30 minutes go by, an hour goes by. You literally can't look away.
It is entirely hypnotic. I mean, it is the actual visual definition of satisfying. You're watching a physical transformation happen right before your eyes, and there's a profound psychological comfort in that.
It's incredibly satisfying, and it just soothes the brain. We have all been there, just endlessly scrolling through these resin art videos. But here's the premise we are exploring today. What if that late-night scrolling session wasn't just a way to shut off your brain?
Which is how most people treat it, to be fair.
True. But what if it was actually a window into a highly structured, incredibly profitable business model? Today, we are unpacking a comprehensive, strategic 2026 commercial blueprint dedicated entirely to professionalizing and investing in resin art.
And, the timing of this industry data is what makes it so compelling. We are looking at an analysis that clearly outlines how the handmade craft sector has undergone a massive radical transformation over the last few years.
Yeah, it has completely shed that old folksy, Sunday afternoon bake sale reputation.
Not at all. This isn't just about making a cute, slightly lopsided keychain for your cousin anymore. We're talking about a completely different tier of commerce entirely.
So what does that new tier look like?
Well, it has evolved into a high-margin digital content industry. And the core insight from this 2026 data is this massive paradigm shift. The physical piece of art you hold in your hand, the coaster, the tray, whatever, that is only half the product.
Wait, only half?
Exactly. The process of making it, the video content generated during its creation, is the other half. They are inextricably linked. You cannot have the empire without mastering both sides of that coin.
That is wild. So our mission for this deep dive is to hand you a complete roadmap. We are taking you from an intrigued, sleep-deprived scroller to a highly profitable business owner.
Step by step.
Right. We are going to cover the precise chemistry of the pour, the non-negotiable industrial safety gear you actually need, the exact mathematical pricing formula the professionals use, and this incredibly powerful viral marketing secret known as the demolding moment.
But before we can sell an empire, we actually have to understand the physical reality of what it is we're manufacturing. We really have to look at the alchemy of resin.
Alchemy is honestly the perfect word to describe this, because you are taking two distinct flowing liquids and forcing a violent chemical reaction that creates a solid, durable plastic.
It feels like magic, but it's pure, uncompromising chemistry. And the baseline reality of this business is that this isn't something you can just casually mix together on your kitchen counter while boiling pasta and watching television.
No, absolutely not. If we look at the production protocols, the very first step, before you even uncap a single bottle of liquid, is establishing complete dominion over your environment. The data dictates that resin requires a strictly controlled workspace.
Right, and for starters, it has to be completely dust-free.
Which sounds obvious, but the stakes are incredibly high here.
The stakes are permanence. Resin is viscous, it is sticky, and it takes hours, sometimes even days, to cure.
So any little thing that falls in...
Exactly. A single speck of dust falling from a ceiling fan, a stray pet hair, a rogue microscopic fiber from your favorite sweater. If it lands in that wet resin, it is entombed there forever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it ruins the professional finish immediately. You can't just sand it out without ruining the gloss. The piece is basically dead.
But the environmental control goes way beyond just keeping the room clean. And this is where my hypothetical midnight hobbyist persona runs into a massive wall. The protocols specify a highly specific temperature range, right?
Very specific. Your workspace must maintain a stable ambient temperature between 21 and 25 degrees Celsius.
Now, if I'm just starting out, and let's say I want to make a midnight galaxy tray in my apartment, I usually I just eyeball things. Like if I make a soup, I add a pinch of salt. I don't check if my kitchen is 19 degrees or 26 degrees.
Right. You're treating it like cooking.
Yeah. This feels like baking a highly sensitive souffle. Why can't I just ignore the room temperature? I mean, it's just liquid plastic, right?
Well, because it isn't just liquid plastic until the reaction finishes.
Yeah.
If we look at the actual mechanics of the chemistry, that 21 to 25 degree Celsius window is absolutely non-negotiable because it is the physical boundary of the chemical reaction.
Okay, break that down for me.
So resin relies on a precise combination of a base, the epoxy, and a hardener. When those two liquids meet, they don't just dry like paint, they create an exothermic reaction,
Meaning they produce heat.
literally generating their own internal heat to forge new covalent bonds, curing and hardening into a solid state.
So if it's an exothermic reaction, meaning it needs heat to initiate and sustain the curing process, putting it in a room that's too cold, say 18 degrees, is going to strangle that reaction.
Exactly. The chemical reaction slows down to an absolute crawl. A drop in temperature causes the wet resin to remain sticky indefinitely. It becomes thick, viscous and sluggish.
The molecules just can't find each other to bond.
Right. It might never fully cure. You wait 3 days, pop it out of the mold, and you end up with a tacky, bendable, ruined piece of garbage that attracts fingerprints the second you touch it.
That sounds awful. Okay, so cold is bad, but what if I overcompensate? Let's say it's summer, my apartment's air conditioning is broken, and it's 30 degrees in the room. If it needs heat to cure, wouldn't a hot room just make it cure faster and save me time?
That is arguably a much more dangerous problem, actually.
Really? How so?
If the ambient temperature is too high, it accelerates the chemical reaction uncontrollably. Because the resin creates its own internal heat as it bonds, if you start it in an already hot room, it acts like a runaway freight train.
Oh, because it's compounding the heat.
Yes, it essentially boils itself. The sudden, violent generation of heat can cause the mixture to flash cure right in the mixing cup before you can even pour it.
Wow, flash cure just solidifies instantly.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And even if you do manage to pour it, that rapid overheating causes the final piece to crack, warp, or severely yellow.
That is wild. It really is an aggressive science experiment. You are literally riding the razor's edge of a thermal reaction. And speaking of science, let's look at the actual mixing of those two liquids.
The ratio is critical here.
Right. The industry standard ratio is usually 1:1 or 2:1 by weight or volume, depending on the specific industrial product you are using. And to get that right, you cannot just use a random kitchen measuring spoon.
Definitely not. You need a digital scale or highly accurate graduated cups. Precision is the baseline for profitability here.
So you can't just eyeball a splash of hardener.
If your ratio is off by even a few grams, you have doomed the piece before you even stir it. The chemical bonds require a perfect mathematical partner. If there's too much epoxy, it stays soft. If there is too much hardener, it becomes brittle and shatters.
And the mixing process itself is, it's an exercise in extreme, agonizing patience. The source says you must mix the epoxy and hardener slowly for 3 to 5 minutes.
It feels like an eternity when you're doing it.
I bet. And you have to aggressively scrape the walls and the bottom of the mixing cup the entire time. Now, the scraping makes sense to me. If you leave unmixed epoxy clinging to the sides and then pour that into your mold, you are introducing a street of unactivated liquid into your final piece.
Exactly. It creates a soft, gooey spot that ruins the item.
But why the huge emphasis on mixing slowly? If I want them to bind perfectly, shouldn't I be whipping the stuff together like I'm making a meringue?
Oh, no. If you whip it like a meringue, you are going to trap thousands of microscopic air bubbles in a highly viscous liquid.
And bubbles are the enemy of clear plastic.
They completely ruin the crystal clear glass effect that defines premium resin art. You are trying to fold the liquids into each other, not aerate them.
But even with the slowest, most careful folding, the physics of pouring thick liquid means you are going to get some bubbles, right?
Always. It's inevitable.
And the protocol here has a very specific mechanism for dealing with that. After you pour your perfectly mixed temperature-controlled resin into your silicone molds, you don't just walk away. You have to sit there and wait exactly 2 minutes.
That 2-minute pause is crucial. It gives the liquid a moment of stillness, allowing the trapped buoyant air to naturally fight its way to the surface of the viscous material.
And then comes the part everyone loves watching in the videos, the torch.
Yes, the best part.
You take a heat gun or a specialized butane torch and you pass it quickly, never lingering over the surface of the wet resin.
It's the rapid application of extreme heat that instantly thins the surface tension of the resin, allowing those rising air bubbles to burst and smooth out.
It is incredibly satisfying to watch.
It really is, and functionally necessary for a flawless finish.
But then, the waiting game begins. The data shows these pieces take 24 to 48 hours to fully cure before they can be safely removed from the molds. Now, while that chemical reaction is quietly happening, we need to talk about what actually makes the piece valuable.
These aesthetics.
Exactly. We aren't just manufacturing clear plastic discs, we are creating highly sought-after art.
Yes. The commercial analysis breaks down 3 highly specific, dominant aesthetic techniques that drive consumer demand in this industry. The first is a technique called inclusions.
Inclusions, what does that look like?
This is the deliberate suspension of heavy amounts of material inside clear resin to create a 3-dimensional depth effect. The primary materials used are intense pigments, pink and purple glitter, gold flakes, and small beads.
I have a theory about why this looks so cool. It plays with our perception of gravity. If I drop a handful of heavy gold flakes into a glass of water, they just instantly sink to the bottom.
Right, because water is thin.
But resin is thick. If you time the pour right, as the exothermic reaction is thickening the liquid, those heavy glitter particles and gold flakes don't sink. They freeze midair.
They become permanently suspended in the clear space, floating in 3 distinct dimensions.
It gives that coaster a magical deep space galaxy effect.
That is exactly the mechanism. You are manipulating the viscosity to defy gravity.
Okay, so that's inclusions. What's the second technique?
The second technique is natural marble. This is where you mix multiple distinct colors, say a deep blue, a vibrant purple, a liquid gold, and a soft pink bruting.
Yeah.
But you mix them in completely separate cups first.
Oh, so you don't blend them yet.
Right. You don't combine them till the very last second, pouring them simultaneously into the mold in sweeping circular motions.
And because these liquids are thick, they don't just instantly blend into a muddy brown mess like watercolors would, right? They push against each other.
Exactly. They create these distinct, enchanting rolling waves. It essentially mimics the intense geological process of natural marble forming under extreme subterranean pressure over millions of years.
Except you are controlling that fluid dynamic simulation in a silicone mold in about 5 minutes.
Precisely. Now, the third technique revolves around the specific visual additives you are dropping into those cups. And there is a massive difference in how they operate. The 2 main players are mica powders and alcohol inks.
Why would I choose one over the other? Like, what is the actual difference?
The difference is how they interact with light. Mica powders are used when you want a shiny, metallic, utterly opaque look. Mica is basically finely crushed, reflective stone.
Okay, so it's actual stone dust.
Yes. When you mix it into the resin, you are suspending millions of microscopic mirrors throughout the plastic. It blocks the light and reflects it back at the viewer, creating that swirling, pearlescent shimmer.
Okay, so mica is microscopic mirrors. That makes sense.
Alcohol inks, on the other hand, are chemical dyes. They alter the color of the resin itself without adding particulate matter.
Oh, like food coloring.
Very similar, yes.
Yeah.
They act like a stained glass window. They tint the liquid while maintaining its pristine translucency, allowing the light to pass entirely through the piece. You use them when you want clear, free-flowing, ethereal waves of color.
So as a resin artist, you are basically playing the role of a chemist controlling thermal reactions, an engineer managing viscosity, and a painter manipulating light.
It's a lot of hats to wear.
It really is. But here is where we have to pivot. We just spent all this time talking about exothermic reactions, manipulating chemical bonds, and applying literal fire to curing plastics.
Which brings us to the dark side of the craft.
Yeah, that exact chemical reality leads us to a crucial, completely non-negotiable reality of production, a reality that beginners constantly overlook because, quite frankly, it completely ruins the cute, casual aesthetic of a social media video.
We have to talk about personal safety.
We have to. We need to look at the invisible threat filling that 21-degree room.
This is perhaps the most vital part of the entire operation.
Right.
We have to ask, what are you actually breathing in when you force these 2 chemicals to bond? The industrial data is incredibly blunt about this. Liquid resin, during its active curing process, off gases. It releases VOCs.
Volatile organic compounds.
Precisely. These are toxic gases emitted as a byproduct of the exothermic chemical reaction. And the mandate here is absolute. A regular paper mask, like the blue surgical kind you might wear while dusting, or the kind we all got very used to wearing recently, is completely mathematically useless against VOCs.
Because a paper mask is designed to stop physical particulate matter, right? Like dust or water droplets.
Right. It cannot stop a gas. The gas molecules just pass right through the paper fibers.
So the protocol states you must wear a heavy-duty respirator mask equipped with an active carbon filter. The carbon physically traps the gas molecules before they hit your lungs.
And you also have to wear sealed eye protection, like safety goggles, because those gases can irritate and damage your corneas.
And I have to tell you, this deeply alarmed me when I read it, Because you literally never see this online.
You really don't.
I watch these mesmerizing videos all the time. The artists have perfect manicures, maybe a cute linen apron, bare arms, and absolutely no industrial gas mask in sight. It creates this incredibly dangerous, false sense of security that this is just a harmless arts and crafts project, like playing with Play-Doh.
That is the insidious danger of digital curation. Social media shows you the polished performance of the art. It does not show you the harsh industrial reality of the medium.
Because safety goggles don't go viral.
Exactly. The aesthetic of an industrial gas mask doesn't get views, so it gets left out of the frame. The commercial guide is actively trying to break that illusion. If you want to turn this into a business, you have to treat it like a manufacturing facility.
And it is not just protecting the lungs and eyes. There is a very specific, uncompromising rule about protecting your hands. You must use thick nitrile gloves, not latex, nitrile.
This is a huge mistake beginners make.
Right, and I was trying to figure out why, because latex feels like it should be fine. It's rubber. But the source says using regular latex gloves to handle epoxy resin is essentially like using a screen door on a submarine. It completely defeats the entire purpose of having a barrier in the first place.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanism at play. It comes down to molecular size. Resin specifically interacts with and permeates standard latex.
It just goes right through it.
Yes. The molecules of the liquid epoxy are small enough and chemically aggressive enough to pass right through the microscopic pores of a stretched latex glove.
So you are sitting there wearing gloves, thinking you are totally safe, but your skin underneath is secretly absorbing these harsh chemical compounds.
Exactly. You are actually making it worse because you are trapping the chemicals directly against your skin under the glove, baking them in.
Baking them in, that is a horrifying image.
Over time, repeated exposure to unmixed epoxy and hardener leads to severe permanent contact dermatitis and aggressive allergic reactions. Your body basically builds up an intolerance until your skin breaks out in hives just being near the open bottles.
Wow. And nitrile prevents that.
Yes. Nitrile gloves are made from a synthetic rubber copolymer. They provide a dense, chemical-resistant barrier that the resin molecules physically cannot penetrate.
The underlying philosophy here is crystal clear. Taking safety seriously from day one is how you prevent a profitable side hustle from mutating into a chronic health hazard.
True professionals prioritize longevity in their craft.
Because you cannot build an empire if you are slowly poisoning yourself to make a sparkly coaster.
Exactly. But, we've just established a literal hazmat situation in a spare bedroom. We have respirators, specialized nitrile barriers, and strict climate control.
Yeah, the immediate logical assumption for anyone listening is that setting up a facility this industrial, this precise, must cost thousands and thousands of dollars.
Which is exactly what most people assume.
That was my assumption. But the most shocking part of this 2026 data is the actual financial barrier to entry. Looking at the itemized startup table for building this entirely functional, safe, home-based production facility, it is stunningly accessible. They estimate a total startup budget between $200 and $315 US.
It's remarkably low. Let's break down the mechanics of that $200 to $315 budget because it is allocated with extreme efficiency.
Let's do it. Logically, the biggest chunk of that budget goes to the raw material. Between $60 and $90 is allocated for high-quality resin and hardener. But there is a massive caveat here. You can't just buy the cheapest industrial epoxy at the hardware store.
No, the data specifies it absolutely must be UV resistant.
Why does that matter so much?
It matters because of how plastics degrade. Standard epoxy resin, over time and exposure to the ambient ultraviolet light from the sun, undergoes a molecular breakdown.
It physically breaks down.
The UV rays literally sever the polymer bonds in the plastic, causing the material to absorb blue light and reflect yellow light. It turns a sickly, aged yellow color.
Oh, that's why old plastic looks so gross.
Exactly. If you are selling a premium, crystal clear piece of art and it turns yellow, sitting on a customer's coffee table in 6 months, your brand is dead. UV-resistant resin contains chemical stabilizers that absorb and dissipate that radiation instead, ensuring the absolute longevity of the art.
So you are basically paying for the chemical guarantee of permanence.
Worth every penny.
For sure. Next on the budget, because we just talked about the price of protection, is our safety gear. The heavy-duty respirator, the carbon filters, the safety goggles, and a box of 100 nitrile gloves. That entire hazmat suite will run you between $35 and $50.
Which, considering it literally saves your lungs and skin, is the best investment on the board.
Without question. Now, you have the chemicals, but you can't just pour them onto your kitchen table. You need infrastructure. what is actually holding this liquid while it cures? That brings us to silicone mold.
Crucial component.
Right. The budget estimates $40 to $70 for a varied collection of molds, cups, trays, keychains, and letters. And I have to ask, why silicone? Why not hard plastic or metal or wood?
Silicone is a fundamentally unique material. It is an elastomer. On a molecular level, it has an extremely low surface energy, meaning practically nothing can permanently adhere to it.
So it's basically the ultimate non-stick cookware for industrial plastics.
Exactly. Furthermore, it is highly heat resistant, which is crucial when we remember that the curing resin is generating its own extreme heat and we are attacking it with a blowtorch.
Right, a plastic mold would just melt.
Precisely. Once the resin finishes its exothermic reaction and cools into a solid, rigid plastic, you can literally just peel the flexible silicone mold right off. It leaves a perfectly smooth surface behind.
Okay, so we have the canvas. Next, we need the paint, the aesthetic elements, the mica powders, the alcohol inks, the gold leaf we discussed earlier. The budget allocates $25 to $40 for a starter set of these pigments.
And a little goes a very long way here.
Because they are so highly concentrated, right? Just a few drops or a tiny scoop is enough for a whole batch. That initial investment will last through months of production cycles.
Then we have the mechanical tools. The digital scale for precision measuring so we don't ruin the covalent bonds, the butane heat torch for the surface bubbles, and bulk mixing sticks. That is another $20 to $35.
And finally, the last item on the startup budget, which I found totally fascinating, is luxury packaging. Custom cardboard boxes, branded tissue paper, logo stickers. The guide estimates $20 to $30 for this.
This is a huge point.
It is a massive psychological shift. It is deeply significant that luxury packaging is included in the initial $300 startup budget, right alongside the essential life-saving safety gear. They don't say, buy packaging later when you are successful.
Because the packaging is the product. The data is making a profound statement about perceived value here. You aren't just selling a piece of molded plastic. From day one, from the very first item you ship out of your spare bedroom, you are selling a luxury handcrafted brand.
It sets the tone immediately.
Right. The unboxing experience, the rustle of the branded tissue paper, the premium feel of the box that establishes the value in the consumer's mind before they even see the resin itself.
So for around $300, you have a complete professional factory. But having the factory is only step one. How do you actually price the objects coming out of it so you don't go bankrupt?
This is where people get really nervous.
I was nervous just reading it. The commercial analysis provides a very specific mathematical professional pricing formula. It goes like this. Final selling price equals the exact cost of materials plus the cost of packaging and shipping. You take that total base number and you multiply it by 2.5.
And that's just the first part.
Right. Then to that inflated number, you add your hours of work multiplied by your target hourly wage.
It is a rigorous, unforgiving formula.
It is extremely rigorous. And honestly, I have to challenge this 2.5 multiplier. I understand valuing your time, but let's run a scenario with my fictional Midnight Galaxy tray. Or let's just scale it down to a coaster.
Okay, let's run the numbers.
I sit down and calculate that the resin, a pinch of glitter, and the fancy cardboard box cost me exactly $10 in physical materials. According to the formula, I must multiply that $10 by 2.5. So now my base price is $25.
Correct.
Then, let's say it took me an hour of active labor to prep, mix, pour, and torch, and I value my specialized time at $20 an hour. I add that $20 to the $25. Now I am trying to sell a single solitary coaster for $45.
It sounds steep.
As a beginner, I am looking at that number and thinking I am going to get laughed off the internet. If I price a coaster at $45, aren't I just competing with big box stores who sell a pack of 4 coasters for $10? Am I not immediately pricing myself entirely out of the market?
It is the most common fear for any new creator. But the economic data defends this formula aggressively. Mathematically, it is the only way to survive. You have to realize that you are not competing with a big box store. Target is selling mass-produced injection molded plastic.
Okay, that's fair.
You are selling a boutique, handcrafted, unique piece of functional art. But more importantly, let's look at the mechanism of that 2.5 multiplier. Think of it like the food cost rule in the restaurant industry.
The food cost rule.
Yes. When you order a $50 steak at a high-end restaurant, you aren't just paying for the physical cut of meat on the plate. You are paying to keep the lights on in the dining room. You're paying the chef's salary. And crucially, you are paying for the steaks that accidentally got burned in the kitchen and thrown away.
Ooh, so the 2.5 multiplier is your manufacturing overhead.
Precisely.
Okay, I hear you on the overhead. But as a consumer, I don't care about your overhead. I just see a $45 price tag. How does a creator overcome the psychological hurdle of asking a buyer to pay for their unseen manufacturing mistakes?
Because the multiplier covers the invisible realities of manufacturing that guarantee the consumer gets a perfect product. The material cost isn't just the resin in the final coaster. What about the wet resin left over clinging to the mixing stick? What about the silicone cup you accidentally ripped and had to throw away? What about the piece that didn't cure right because your room temperature dipped to 20 degrees instead of 21 and you had to throw it in the trash? The 2.5 multiplier covers wastage, mistakes, and utilities like the electricity for your heat gun.
So it's a buffer.
Yes. Furthermore, and this is the most critical part, it builds in a profit margin that allows for future scaling. If you only ever charge exactly what it costs to make the item, plus your hourly wage, you break even. You can never afford to buy a second, larger mold. You can never afford to run a paid advertisement. You can never eventually rent a commercial studio space.
You just remain a hobbyist forever.
Exactly. The formula is the exact dividing line between a sustainable, scalable enterprise and a time-consuming, expensive hobby.
Okay, the restaurant analogy totally unlocks that for me. You're pricing in the reality of the business, protecting your margins from day one so you don't bleed out from invisible costs. So let's say we trust the math. We have a beautifully packaged, safely produced, properly priced, $45 luxury coaster.
Now you have to sell it.
Right. Because here's the harsh reality of 2026. A great product sitting quietly in an empty room makes $0. How do you actually get millions of eyes on it? This brings us to the absolute most dynamic part of the entire blueprint, the visual marketing strategy and the cultural phenomenon known as the demolding moment.
This is where the digital landscape completely merges with the physical craft. The industry data makes a staggering claim here. 90% of marketing in this specific field relies entirely on the visual appeal of short-form videos on platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels.
90%. That is a massive statistic. That essentially means you are a digital video producer first and a resin artist second.
Effectively, yes. Your storefront is no longer a brick-and-mortar window. Your storefront is the algorithm. And the commercial blueprint breaks down exactly what kind of content commands that algorithm. It highlights the absolute dominance of ASMR and satisfying content.
We talked about this at the very beginning of the show, that hypnotic, brain-soothing feeling of watching a late-night pour. The analysis explicitly says these videos are successful because the mixture of flowing colors, the slow sparkle of the suspended glitter, and the smooth, perfect edges of the silicone molds provide a deep visual pleasure.
It literally calms the viewer's nervous system.
Let's see why. Like structurally, why does it work so well?
The underlying psychology of satisfying content is incredibly fascinating. Based on the behavioral principles outlined in the data, the appeal is deeply rooted in the fundamental human desire to see order created from chaos.
Order from chaos. What is the actual psychological mechanism there?
Think about the process from the brain's perspective. You start with messy, unformed, sticky liquids. They are chaotic, they spill, they are formless. It represents entropy. But through deliberate, measured action, the slow mixing, the precise pouring, and the application of extreme heat, you change the state of matter.
It's transformative.
Yes. The torching of the bubbles is a highly specific visual trigger of perfection. You watch imperfections literally evaporate. You transform that liquid chaos into a perfectly smooth, rigid, permanent, flawless object. It is a deeply comforting, controlled narrative arc for the anxious human brain to process, neatly packaged in a 30-second video.
That makes so much sense. We live in a chaotic world, and watching someone force liquid into perfect, unyielding shape is therapeutic. And the strategy emphasizes heavily showing that specific process. Behind-the-scenes content is king.
Audiences don't just want a static photo of the finished product.
Exactly. They want to witness the alchemy. Filming the pouring of the separate colors and specifically zooming in on that moment of using the torch to pop the surface bubbles reliably commands millions of views. But the analysis saves its most potent secret for the very end of the video. The ultimate viral trigger.
The demolding moment.
The demolding moment. The data notes that filming the fully cured piece being slowly and clearly extracted from the flexible silicone mold is the single most powerful marketing tool you have in your arsenal. The text insists this must always be framed and edited as a happy surprise for the viewer at the end of the video.
It serves as the climax of the psychological narrative of order from chaos we just discussed.
It really reminds me of a magic trick or, a really high-end, high-stakes unboxing video. There is this massive buildup of tension. You watched the pour 24 hours ago in the video timeline. You are wondering, what is it going to look like? Did the separate colors mix right, or did they turn brown? Did the bubbles actually clear?
The anticipation is everything.
And then you see the artist's heavy gloved hands gripping the edge of the silicone. They slowly, agonizingly peel back the flexible edge. The tension builds, and then pop. The pristine, glossy, perfect, solid piece is revealed to the camera.
And the brain just releases a massive, satisfying hit of dopamine.
Yes, it is algorithmic gold. It guarantees watch time because the viewer physically cannot scroll away until they see the reveal.
But the commercial strategy detailed here is incredibly sophisticated. It does not just blindly rely on the viral dopamine hit. It outlines a dual threat marketing strategy.
Oh, right. Because views don't equal cash.
Exactly. You use the ASMR and the demolding moment to capture the algorithm to farm those millions of views. But views alone do not pay the bills directly. To capture the actual buyer, you must use strict SEO and utility descriptions.
Right. SEO, search engine optimization. Because there is a huge difference between someone mindlessly watching a video at 2 a.m. and someone actually pulling out their credit card.
A huge difference.
The strategy says you must write precise, searchable descriptions of the product's actual physical utility. You don't just caption the video with pretty blue swirly thing. You write something highly intentional, like heat-resistant coaster adds a luxury marble touch to your home desk.
Exactly. Yeah. You are satisfying two entirely different digital systems simultaneously. The algorithm wants engagement, watch time, and looks, which the visual satisfaction of the demolding provides, but the search engine wants intent and relevance.
So when they search, they find you.
When someone types luxury desk decor or heat-resistant coaster into the search bar, your video needs to be the one that shows up because that person is actually ready to buy.
And the data provides the exact hashtags you need to use to bridge this gap. You use hashtag resin art and hashtag resin creations to categorize the craft, but you anchor it with hashtag home decor to signal utility.
It's a brilliant combination.
It is. You combine the visual hook of the demolding magic trick with the searchability of functional home decor, and you have built a perfect self-sustaining marketing engine.
Which brings us to the final phase of the business model. Let's assume you have executed perfectly. You have the climate-controlled production, the safety gear, the strict 2.5x pricing, and the viral marketing. Your videos are popping off, and you are completely selling out of your inventory of coasters and keychains.
A great problem to have.
Yes, but to build a true empire, a lasting business, you cannot rely entirely on high-volume, low-ticket items.
Right. You can't just hustle selling $45 coasters forever if you actually want to scale to a six-figure business. You would be pouring rotten 24 hours a day. You have to diversify your offerings.
And the final segment of our deep dive looks at how this blueprint instructs you to diversify your revenue streams.
The data outlines 3 distinct pillars of revenue that build on top of each other. The first is what we have been discussing all along, direct sales, selling ready-made, unique pieces like trays, jewelry, and coasters through a digital storefront like Shopify, or funneling traffic directly through Instagram.
And the analysis specifically notes that those coasters and small geode molds are the absolute workhorses of this first pillar. They require less raw material, they are fast to pour, and they are quick to sell. They are the bread and butter that keep the lights on. But the second pillar is where the profit margins shift dramatically and where the true scale happens. Custom orders. Specifically, the data highlights the exploding market for floral preservation.
Okay, this part completely blew my mind. We are talking about taking a bride's actual physical wedding bouquet, carefully drying the flowers, and then preserving them suspended forever inside massive, heavy, thick blocks of clear resin.
It's a highly specialized skill.
The analysis notes that these custom preservation pieces are in extraordinarily high demand, and they sell for hundreds, sometimes over $1,000 per piece.
Hundreds of dollars compared to a $45 coaster.
It is wild to think about. The exact same raw material epoxy resin from the exact same jugs you budgeted $90 for in your startup costs can yield a $45 functional coaster or a $500 wedding block.
It's a massive leap.
It is like the difference between selling a single brick and selling the emotional cornerstone of a house. The chemical material is identical, but the value is vastly different. How does the market justify that massive price jump?
Well, if we look at consumer psychology and the concept of perceived value, the strategy reveals a profound truth about what people actually pay for. When you move from making trays into floral preservation, You are no longer selling the physical material cost of the resin, or even the aesthetic labor of the pour.
What are you selling then?
You are selling the emotional preservation of a core human memory.
You are literally capturing time.
Precisely. A wedding bouquet is inherently temporary. It is beautiful for exactly one day, and then it will wilt, turn brown, and die in a week. By encasing it in a solid block of crystal clear resin, you halt its decay. You make it immortal.
Oh, wow.
The customer is not paying for the plastic, they're paying for permanence. That profound emotional value is why the pricing scales exponentially. You transition from being a craftsperson to being a memory keeper.
That is a staggering pivot in business strategy. And yet, the third pillar of revenue, the blueprint outlines, doesn't even involve selling physical resin at all. It is entirely digital. It is about monetizing the massive audience you built with your demolding videos.
Right. Once your social media accounts grow from those viral order from chaos moments, you activate entirely new, passive digital income streams.
The blueprint lists ad revenue paid directly from the social platforms themselves for high viewership. It suggests selling beginner educational courses, basically packaging your knowledge and teaching other people how to set up their room, mix the chemicals, and do exactly what you just did.
A very common pivot for creators.
And crucially, affiliate marketing. Partnering with the massive chemical companies that manufacture the resin, the silicone molds, and the mica powders, and earning a direct commission every single time one of your viewers clicks your link and buys their own starter supplies.
When you step back and look at it, the strategy has outlined a perfectly closed, self-sustaining loop. The flywheel of the modern creator economy.
How so?
Your physical products fund the creation of your videos. Your videos generate viral views. Those viral views generate direct sales, ad revenue, and affiliate commissions. That massive influx of capital allows you to buy better supplies, take on those high-ticket custom preservation orders, and produce even higher quality videos.
The flywheel spins faster and faster,
Generating its own momentum entirely.
It is an absolute masterclass in modern digital commerce, completely hiding in plain sight behind a relaxing, satisfying video of colorful liquid pouring into a cup. So, let's take a breath and recap the massive journey this 2026 blueprint has taken us on.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We started by establishing dominion over our environment, setting up a highly controlled 21 to 25 degree room, and learning the precise, slow-stirring exothermic alchemy of epoxy and hardener. We confronted the invisible, highly toxic threat of VOCs, strapping on our carbon-filtered respirators and thick nitrile barriers to prioritize our longevity over aesthetics.
The hazards are real.
We built a complete home factory for around $300, crucially including luxury packaging from day one. We learned to ruthlessly protect our margins against the invisible costs of manufacturing with the 2.5x restaurant-style pricing formula. We unlocked the algorithm with the psychological dopamine hit of the demolding moment, using ASMR to capture millions of views and strict SEO to capture intent-driven buyers.
A complete marketing engine.
And finally, we scaled the empire, moving from fast-selling coasters to the high-ticket emotional weight of preserving a dying wedding bouquet, all while monetizing the digital exhaust of our video content to keep the flywheel spinning.
It is a breathtakingly comprehensive blueprint for turning a late-night, sleep-deprived curiosity into a highly sustainable, scalable career. But looking at the entirety of this data and the cultural trends it exposes, it leaves me with a final lingering thought to mull over.
What's that?
Think about the era we are operating in. It is the year 2026. We live in an increasingly digital, ephemeral world where almost everything we consume, create, or value, a text message, a social media video, a digital currency, a piece of software, is just fleeting, invisible data on a glass screen. It is entirely temporary.
That's very true.
Isn't it fascinating that one of the most profitable, viral, culturally dominant trends outlined in this entire commercial sector is the literal physical opposite of that?
The physical opposite? How do you mean?
The entire fundamental premise of resin art is the deliberate act of taking something incredibly fragile and temporary, a chaotic swirl of liquid color, a delicate gold flake floating in space, a dying, wilting flower from a fleeting wedding day, and intentionally trapping it in a solid, heavy, indestructible block of plastic to last forever.
Wow.
What does our collective late-night obsession with watching resin cure, with buying these heavy blocks of preserved time, say about our deep underlying human desire for permanence in a world that feels like it's constantly, uncontrollably slipping through our fingers?
That is an incredibly profound question to end on, a search for permanence in a digital world. Next time you are scrolling late at night and you see that glossy pour, or even if you just look at the physical manufactured objects sitting on your desk right now, imagine the hidden processes, the intense chemistry, and the careful strategic planning behind every single one of them. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.